Hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Estate Cafe here at the Hive in Wasaga Beach. I'm David Grossman. It's great to have you all here. We have real estate agents, we have other patrons. We also have a number of people online, and they keep coming in. So I'm letting them in as we go. We have regular patrons here. Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoy the seminar this morning. The seminar will be, we're aiming to keep it exactly to 1 hour in length. There are 3 topics that we are going to cover. The first one is co-housing with lawyer Bob Aaron. Bob Aaron is online with us from his office in Toronto, perhaps his home office. Hello, Bob.
Hi.
Hi, Bob. Bob is a seasoned lawyer, and he has written, I think it is more than 700 articles on different points of law for the Toronto Star. Is that right, Bob?
About 800 now.
About 800 articles. So that's a lot of articles, and he specializes in real estate and maybe does some other law too, but I'll let him tell us about that. But of course, the main topic for Bob is co-housing. And the reason that topic, I asked him if he would speak to it, is because personally, I've had a number of, as a mortgage broker, and by the way, I'm David Grossman, mortgage broker and host, along with my partner, Jerry Hogenhout, is over here. He's a CPA, and he's my co-host. Together, Jerry and I are sponsoring this event. So I've had people who refer to me over the years, especially in the last year, where they were, a single person who just could not qualify, did not make enough income to qualify. Because I mean, I don't have to tell you all about house prices, even here in Wasaga Beach, but anywhere in the province, they've just gone up and up. And it's hard for people to qualify on their own. So I know Bob has written about this topic, and I asked him about it, and he shared with me some great articles. So if anybody wants to see those articles about people who have ventured into this, groups of people, related or unrelated, who have bought together, and Bob's going to talk to us about the types of things to look out for. Later on in this 1 hour, I'm going to talk about outside the box mortgage financing. If you're a real estate agent, the slant is sort of how to increase your sales through outside the box mortgage financing. And if you're just a regular investor or somebody who's just interested in real estate, I hope you'll find that of interest as well. Jerry is going to speak with us about private equity, about private markets, and investing in REITs. Real estate investment trusts. He's going to talk to us about that. So first, let's get things going with Bob. Bob, talk to us, please.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me, David. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet people virtually online and in your gathering up on Lake Huron. I want to talk about co-housing. So I'm going to start off with a little story about some clients of mine through another lawyer. This is back in the 1980s. 3 lovely Filipino nannies decided that they were going to be able to save money instead of them each paying for an individual rental room or apartment. They could save money by buying a house together. So that's what they did. Unfortunately, they didn't have any agreement in place. They just thought, okay, we'll work it out because we're all friends. So time passes, and one of the 3 takes on a partner. I don't know whether it's a romantic partner or just to share space and to share expenses. And then another one takes on a partner. And now there's 5 people living in a place that was meant only for 3. They all came to me and they said, we have a problem. We don't know whether to divide the expenses 5 ways or 3 ways. And they didn't have an agreement. They didn't have an agreement on how it would work. They didn't have an agreement on how to unwind it because three of them owned the property. And they wanted me to solve the problem, to be King Solomon and figure out whether they should share utilities, cable TV, the monthly rent, whether they would split it 5 ways or 3 ways. And they each presented their arguments to me, and I didn't have any answers. Was it fair for them to share 5 ways? Yes. Was it fair for them to set up 3 ways the way it was originally intended? That was also fair. And I think they eventually figured it out without me, because really there was no answer on how to share equally. And that brings me to the important point of, if you're going to have co-housing, if you're going to share a house, or an apartment, you better figure out how it's going to work right off the top. So I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about understanding co-housing. Co-housing was developed in a more formal way a few years ago, where individuals or families choose to decide to live together in a sort of community-oriented setting. Each person in the household has his or her private space, usually the bedroom, and they share common areas like gardens, kitchens, recreational spaces, backyards. The goal is not only to save money, but to foster a community where the residents, the occupants, collaborate on shared responsibilities and enjoy the benefits of communal living. There are many advantages. The first one is, of course, money. The second one is community and social interaction. One of the problems with people living alone is they have nobody to talk to. If they're not in a senior's home, or if they're not in some other kind of group relationship, people are living alone and they don't like that. So one of the primary advantages of co-housing is the sense of community that it fosters. Residents often develop close relationships with their neighbors, their co-housing owners, and they create a supportive environment, it can be like an extended family. And a community spirit can lead to mental well-being and a sense of belonging. Of course, the other thing is shared resources and social interaction. They only have to buy one TV instead of 3 or 4 or 5. By pooling resources such as tools, equipment, and even childcare, co-housing residents can achieve significant cost savings. Shared amenities like kitchen and laundry rooms can also reduce individual expenses and promote a more sustainable and more economical lifestyle. You can customize the relationship and its flexibility. Unlike traditional housing, co-housing communities often involve residents in the design and decision-making process. This allows for customized living spaces that meet individual needs while still fostering a sense of belonging to a larger community. And I want to pause here and say that co-housing can be either organized under some kind of umbrella organization, and it can also be just a bunch of people, 3, 4, 5 people getting together and setting up their own joint venture relationship. There used to be something in Toronto called weown.ca, and this was actually organizing and setting up co-housing agreements and relationships. And when I went online yesterday to check them out, they're no longer in operation. Their website is down. So maybe it didn't work out for them. Maybe they had a bad business model, but it can be challenging to set up co-housing relationships. Security and safety. People aren't living alone in co-housing. They can live in a close-knit community of 2, 3, 4 or more people. Residents look out for one another. They reduce the risk of crime and promote a safer living environment. But there are also disadvantages. And these are the problems. And these are the things that you have to consider before you're going into or setting up a co-housing relationship. Communal decision-making. Involvement in communal decision-making can be empowering. It can also lead to conflicts like the ones with my Filipino nannies, and disagreements among residents about who gets the choice of the TV program? Do they watch this program or that program? How do they share the expenses? How do they share the fridge? How do they divide the food? Can I eat your macaroni and cheese? That's communal decision making. It can be time consuming and challenging to navigate. It's not always easy. And another disadvantage is the lack of privacy. If you're living in close proximity to your neighbors, there's less privacy compared to the traditional housing relationship where you have your own space, your own place, and nobody can use it. So balancing personal space with communal living expectations can be a source of tension for some people. Shared responsibility is another disadvantage. Who takes out the garbage on Tuesdays? Who cleans up the kitchen? Who does the dishes? Participating in these decisions can require a level of commitment. And if somebody doesn't live up to their responsibilities, there may be problems and tensions. And if somebody is good at cooking but bad at housekeeping, maybe you have to figure out who's going to do what and then figure out how it's going to work out. And this can cause strain in the relationship. So you better be careful when you're setting these things up. Legal complexities. If 3 people go on title and 3 people sign for a mortgage, you have to set it up so that everybody understands that they're not responsible for 1/3 of the mortgage if their friends or neighbors default. They're responsible for 100%. So you have each person is individually responsible for 100% of the mortgage. And if one person defaults on mortgage or utilities or any other shared expenses, it can be very, very problematic for the others who are going to have to make up the shortfall. So if you're having a joint venture, the most important thing I think is to have an agreement and understand how it works. Talk to a lawyer who's got some experience in this area, and provide a mechanism for unwinding it or for dispute resolution. How do you resolve disputes about little things like who gets to watch the TV at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night? Co-housing communities, another disadvantage can be limited availability and location. It's difficult to find these places. And then to set up and find people who want to share in the venture. Do you find the building first, the house that you want to share first, or do you find the people first and then the number of people go out looking for a house? So it can be a problem. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg, the house or the people? I often advise clients on, well, not often, this doesn't happen very often, but I can advise clients on the legal aspects of co-housing. And I think it's very important to set up an agreement at the beginning as to how it will work. Included in the agreement will be property ownership, understanding the legal framework for ownership in a co-housing community. Whether it's through a condominium style arrangement or a cooperative, it's essential for residents to understand how these things are going to work. Then you're going to have to set up rules like taking out the garbage, like priority for watching TV, like vacuuming, like laundry. What if 2 people want to do their laundry at the same time? This can be problematic, and you're going to have to sit down and work out all the nitty-gritty right from the beginning. How do you work out the financial structures? What if one person has 50,000 deposit to put into the venture and one person has 100 or 150? How do you figure this out? How do you balance it in terms of their ongoing rental obligations? It may be difficult to find people who have exactly the same amount of money to put into it. Dispute resolution. One of the problems you have to work out in advance. It's like a cohabitation agreement for marriage or a prenuptial agreement. You have to consider the worst case scenario. And that's what I do when I prepare co-housing agreements. You have to set up a dispute resolution mechanism right at the building, right at the beginning. And you have to figure it out how it's going to work in a worst case scenario if people don't get along well. There's a lot of stuff online about co-housing, people who have made it successful. I did a quick search recently and I found a story about how 6 millennials bought a house together in downtown Toronto and built a community. There's another one. Oh, movie night at Clarence Commons. There was another one where a bunch of people on St. Clarence Avenue set up their own co-housing. One of the things that struck me is that all of the things that I found online were dated. They were like 3, 4, 5 years ago. There doesn't seem to be much recently on co-housing. So I don't know whether it's just not popular anymore or whether these kind of arrangements have been priced out of the market. But there we go. Is it
There was
still
a
viable?
story, there was a story, Bob, about some retired ladies in Port Perry, a group of women who got a place together. Should we see if there are some questions, Bob? Can we open it up to see if there's?
Yeah, I'm pretty well done. I'm happy to take any questions anybody might have.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on co-housing? I know that in one of the articles that you sent me, Bob, there was people who had a property that had 3 units in it. So while they were friendly and they did spend some time together, they each had their own units. And so they didn't have to deal with what TV program and whether somebody was going to eat your macaroni in the fridge. So there was 3 units, as I recall, and one woman lived in one. She may have had a kid. The other one also may have had a kid, and then they rented out the third one, so they had a source of additional income. So that presumably would alleviate some of the challenges with the day-to-day living aspects, I guess.
The downside of that is, I think that it's more expensive, and the real estate agents online will answer this. It's more expensive, I think, to find a triplex with 3 individual units than to find a 3-bedroom condo or a 3-bedroom house together with just one title, one ownership. So there are upsides and downsides to find that. That would be ideal, David, if people can find a place with 3 individual units, like a triplex.
Right, yes. Well, we're seeing more and more of that type of thing nowadays where people are adding units. You can create a unit from your garage. I mean, with the new pressure from the Ford government, well, it's not that new anymore, but since Bill 23 came out, I guess it's probably been close to 2 years. We had an event last summer where we were talking about how to add units to your property. So, and that's something I'm going to talk a little bit more about from a financing standpoint, because if you're an investor or a real estate agent and you're trying to figure out how to cash flow rental properties, it certainly helps to have additional units. And that's more possible nowadays with the support from the Ontario government because of the housing shortage.
Somebody asked a question online, what's the difference between co-ownership and cooperative? So those are 2 different animals, and they're not really what we're talking about. Before the Condo Act came in 1967, some entrepreneurs, especially in Toronto, bought apartment buildings and then divided them up. In some cases, they are set up either as co-ownerships or cooperatives. In a co-ownership, everybody gets a deed. So there may be 30, 40, 50 owners, and each of them gets an occupancy agreement and a registered deed for, let's say, 0.567% of the title to the building. In a cooperative, the people may get shares. So you may have 367 out of 10,000 shares, and there's still an occupancy agreement. But those are not exactly what we're talking about, because those involve larger projects, 20, 30, 40, 50 units. I do a lot of that kind of stuff. It's difficult to market those things because you have to get board approval for new ownerships. The new owners have to get police checks. And of course, if you've got 30 people and 3 of them are in default, the others have to make up the shortfall. And in Toronto, there's only a few lenders: Luminous Financial, Duca Credit Union, Italian Canadian, and Northern Birch finance these things, and the interest rate is slightly higher. But those are where it looks like a condo or an apartment building, and they're either co-ownerships or cooperatives. But those are popular now because you can't really tell from the outside whether it's a condo or a co-op or an apartment building. But the units in co-ops and co-ownerships in Toronto are several $100,000 cheaper than the equivalent condo.
Right, and nowadays with a regular single-family dwelling, you can actually have up to, we have a lender, a prime lender, who will allow up to 10 people on the purchase, 10 people on the mortgage. So from a financing standpoint, there are solutions, but from the standpoint of creating a proper agreement and getting some guidelines, Bob Barron can definitely help you. Bob, real estate law is your main thing. Is there any other types of law that you're active in? And please tell us also how people can get a hold of you.
So my website is is aaron.ca, www.aaron.ca. And there's like 800 columns that I've written for the Toronto Star in the last 24 years. So there's a wealth of information there, and it's all searchable. My email is bob@aaron.ca, and I am available at 416-364-9366. That number's on my website. I may have to leave because I got a client appointment downtown shortly, but thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure today.
Thanks, Bob. We have one more question. If you have time, we have one more question. Karine, go ahead.
Difference between, or is it possible to do co-ownership where it's an investment company?
The question is it possible to do a co-ownership where it's an investment property?
I don't see why not. It's complicated, but so you have how would that work? 3 people own a building and then they rent it out. Is that what the question is?
Is that what you mean, Shireen?
Yeah, so it's what we were talking about the other day. So there's a property for sale which has an existing business on it. Yes. And then it's got a house that also comes with the property, and the house, in my vision, should be bed and breakfast.
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, you heard that?
Yeah, so it'd be like a joint venture. 3 or 4 or 2 people own a building and then they agree to rent it out. I've been involved in a number of those. And whether it's rented out to a cigar store or people living in it, it's just a joint venture of investors on a small scale.
Okay, thank you. What was Giselle, did you have a question?
How would you say you have 3 people investing and living, sharing a common, one passed away, whatever, how do you handle that?
Okay, did you hear that, Bob? 3 people
Yeah,
are, yeah.
In joint venture agreement, in a co-housing agreement, you could specify areas of default. So I hate to say it, but if one of the owners dies, the option would be for the estate trustee, maybe the spouse or a relative, to take over as a party to the joint venture. Or you could provide that in the event of divorce or in the event of death, the joint venture the co-housing joint venture should be unwound within a period of 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
It's
all right.
It's a matter of who steps into the shoes of the defaulting or deceased partner.
Okay, so a number of these types of provisions can be put in to a co-housing agreement, cohabitation agreement. They can all be part of the agreement, correct, Bob?
Yes, it has to be done very carefully and thoroughly.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, Bob, thanks again for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it, and we hope to talk to you soon. Hope you have a great day. If we understand you have to leave, if you do, and much appreciated.
Thanks very much for inviting me, David.
Okay, great.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye now. Moving along. So next we have Jerry Hogenhout. Jerry's going to talk to us about private investments. What's the difference between private investments and investments that are on the stock market? And also he's going to talk to you about REITs, real estate investment trusts. Specifically, I know Jerry likes the apartment REITs, but I'll let him do his thing. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone, my friends, my Sega friends, and you. Anyway, that was interesting listening to Bob. Interesting because co-housing, that's that comes into our investment industry too. I myself, we found this little house in Sydney, Nova Scotia. And it happened to have 9 rooms. You like Sydney, Nova Scotia? Is it? That's we bought this thing sight unseen. Then we go visit Sydney, Nova Scotia. Beautiful place. They built this crazy college downtown. Anyway, the point I'm making is co-housing. There's 9 rooms in this little house, and the municipality allows 9 people to live in there. So from an investment point of view, you apply the co-housing to that type of housing, the numbers are great. So instead of just renting out the house to a family, you do this co-housing thing. And it's funny, he mentions all these agreements you need. It's kind of funny when he mentions, what are you watching on TV or who's taking out the garbage? And I'm thinking about my own wife and marriage contract with this. Right? We all agree. Anyway, we're here to talk about REITs. Thank you, David, once again for organizing this. Always love coming up here. I am from Toronto, but I have a cottage up here in Wasaga, and I always look for any reason to come up here and spend time, which I love to do. So, yeah, we're talking about private equity, REITs in specific, and we'll kind of get into it. Private equity, really, when you describe private equity, we're either talking private equity or public equity. And public equity, in simple terms, is just the stock market, mutual funds or stocks. And private equity is really companies that are not listed on the stock exchange. Or if a company you want to go public. I spent 10 years at Douche in their tax department. We did a lot of what's called IPOs, initial public offerings, which takes a private company through the process to become a public company. Why would they do that? They do that for a couple of reasons. One, to raise capital. So if you are a private company and you go through the process, become public, then you are on the stock exchanges, people can buy your shares. Another reason to go public is you probably have all heard these stories about people who have penny shares or they go public and their shares go through their roof. Mark Cuban, when he went public, every one of his employees became billionaires like in a day because they go public, their stock price goes through the roof, employees own shares, and everybody becomes rich. So that's another reason to go. But not everybody wants to go public. Once you go public, there's a huge cost. So a lot of people just don't want to absorb that cost. But they want to raise capital. So that's the world of private equity. So a company is private. There's no stock exchange for them to list their shares. So they go to the general public and ask if anybody's interested in investing in their company. And that's really what private equity is. It is governed in Ontario, it's governed by the Ontario Securities Commissions. In Canada, we govern by province, not nationally. So in Ontario, we have the Ontario Securities Commissions. That requires exempt market dealers, that's what they're called, to licensed dealing reps, that's what they're called. David's a dealing rep, in order to deal with private equity. So I myself, I held the dealing rep license for 5 years. And then long story short, I just changed my whole business model. I didn't want any investment licenses for a whole bunch of reasons. Main reason really is to be able to put the best interest of clients out of my office. The problem with an investment license is they're telling you what to sell. It's not the way I work. I want to work, but basically being unbiased. So when I started the investment industry back in 95, so not this for about 30 years after I left Deloitte, was trying to build up an investment business. And while I was holding these licenses, which brought me into the public market, I'm buying my real estate on the side. And I always wondered why, when you're holding investment license for mutual funds or IROC, a stockbroker, these companies that you work for won't let you talk about real estate. And they shy you away from it. And remember back then, I'm like, why are we talking to clients about real estate? Oh, no, don't do that. That's risky. That's risky. You don't want to do that. Keep them in the stock market. Well, it's a very self-serving reason for all that. We all know why the whole investment industry is designed for your money to be in the bank's mutual funds. That's what it's all about. And people like me come along and say, no, let's get that money out of there. And even if you want to be in the market, do it through a robo-advisor, so your management fees are real low, but also have that money available to go into the real estate market. And it really depends what the client wants. Are we real estate investors? Okay, I think most of us, certainly those, we've been lucky to own a house, we've done well. Most of us know that wealth, real estate is where you build wealth. So, we all like real estate, but, we have to weigh the risk versus the reward. When we manage money, which I do, there's two things that we have to do. One, we have to protect capital. And that's very important. And we have to make a rate of return. So the minute you take your money out of that nice guaranteed GIC and put it into anything, either into the market, into real estate, into whatever you want to invest in, you are adding risk. Okay, so our job is to discuss risk. What is it? Where's your comfort level? How much risk is there? And then ultimately, I guess, as talk about what type of investment that you're making. So in the private equity world, we get to deal with a lot of real estate. And my favorite, again, I've been around for 30 years in the investment world. I've yet to find anything better than a real estate income trust. Okay, and what is a real estate income trust? In simple terms, it's just a fund of apartment buildings. Okay, as we all experience what's going on in this world now for real estate investors, it wasn't that long ago that anything we bought just went up in value. Pretty simple. You didn't really have to have fundamentals in place. You just bought a house and it went up. The world has changed. I used to love the 2-hour radius out of Toronto for duplexes, triplexes. That's a gold mine. Okay, well, it still is, other than the price you have to pay. How can you pay $1 million for a duplex, put 2 people in there and make the math work? It doesn't work. Okay, so we're almost, I'm not saying don't ever buy a duplex or a triplex, but it's not like it was before. So we're all being pushed into this multi-family investing. Okay, that's my sweet spot. I tell people, especially young kids, because we all start with a single family home. Oh, then you get a duplex, or you get a triplex. And the thought of buying an apartment building is so far down the road that it's almost impossible to people. Well, I'm here to say it's easier to buy an apartment building than it is a duplex. Okay, and it's easier because they don't care about your personal tax return. Multi-unit is considered 5 and above. Okay. These lenders don't care about your personal tax return. I'm an accountant. My job is to save you taxes. And we don't want a whole bunch of money on your personal tax return. So we don't want that tax return to dictate how much money that we work from the lender. In multi-unit, they don't care. They do a cap rate calculation, rents minus expenses equals whatever. You already had a cap rate, there's the value, that's what they'll base on that lending. And then they'll lend you 2/3 of that money. Now you got to come up with 1/3. So it's easier. Okay. So I know actually we do a lot of what we call joint venture apartment buildings. So we do them internally. We buy apartment buildings, we'll bring people's money together. But there's also the ability to go into the private equity world and get these REITs, real estate income trusts, which again are a fund of apartment buildings. And again, that's the best investment I've ever seen as far as protecting capital. and getting a greater return consistently. There's good REITs and bad REITs, so you need people like David, who's a dealing rep, and myself to value to look at these companies. What makes a good REIT management? Where are the buildings? Okay, what is the debt to equity? You know, we're living in high interest rate world. Right? I mean, we're seeing people getting killed out there in multi-unit. You go buy a $2 million mortgage, the bank will give you 1.5 million. That's nice at 2%. Now your 5 years is up and you're going, oh my God. So it's, you got to be careful with this stuff. So when we look at the bigger REITs, when we talk REIT, we're talking again a fund of apartment buildings. Most of these REITs will have 10, 20, 30, 40 buildings in them. And we're talking buildings that are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 units. Buildings, they're not little buildings, they're big buildings. Centurion REIT, probably the biggest private REIT in Canada, 150, 160, 170 buildings all across. A huge company. Okay, but the fundamentals are so simple. So simple. We all understand what rent, pay the expenses, we have residual rent. So simple. Okay, and it's funny because when I was at Deloitte too, we used to do audits on the REITs. So it's funny when I deal with these private REITs, I know more about their financial statements of the owners of the companies, which kind of helps when I go in and say, hey, I got a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
But it's simple.
Just
People can understand it. But
Yeah.
okay, anybody can understand that.
Of night.
Okay, so then you got to dig a little deeper. So what makes a good REIT? Management, track their record, where are the buildings?
Yeah.
Okay, are they all downtown Toronto, where we need to have $4,000 a month rent to make the math work? I don't like that. I stay away from downtown Toronto. Why? Because that's the high-end market. I kind of break it down into the low-end market, the medium market, and the high-end market. I myself stay away from the high-end market simply because you're adding more risk. I don't like risk. We want to get rid of risk. So if you stay with that low-end market, because what's going on in the market now is when there's vulnerability in the market, the high-end market gets beat up pretty bad. Like we're in Toronto, we're in Bloor, Islington, we got some high-priced homes there that are not getting what they're supposed to be getting. So that market is vulnerable. So the high-end pushes down medium-end market, and that tries that market. But the whole cap rate will protect that low market. Because nobody's going to sell their house for less than what would make sense for them to rent out that property. So that low end market is nicely protected by cap rate. So from a business model, are we trying to go to the Toronto market where it's expensive and vulnerable and we need 4,000 a month? No, I wouldn't. I'd go for that low to medium market. Because when we look at any business model, we look at two things. What drives the revenue? Any business model, any private equity. What is the revenue model? Where's it coming from? And then we look at the expense side, see how much I can get control. In the REITs, where does the rent come from? Well, where does the sales come from? Well, it comes from rent. Okay, well, we all know what's going on with rents. Okay, is that a sustainable business model? Is anything going to happen with those rents? Well, when you think about what's going on, we all know what's going on. Immigration is crazy. People can't buy houses. Our national debt is through the roof, and that has a correlation to our GDP. Our GDP has to remain high. The easiest way to keep our GDP high is to keep bringing more people in. They've been doing it for 20 years, and that will continue. So nothing is going to change. If anything has changed over the last 20 years, it's that the inability for people to buy a house and instead have to rent. So the revenue stream to a REIT is strong. Okay, rents will always be there. So then you look at the expense side of the equation and you go, well, what's going on there? Property taxes, well, property taxes or property taxes, interest rates. Oh, there's a variable. How do we control that? Well, when you get a government that jumps to a prime rate from 0.25 up to 5 within a year, we got problems. Okay, we have a lot of such problems with these variable mortgages. Okay, but the people I feel sorry for is the tenant, because that's going to filter through the whole system, and eventually those rents just continue to go up. So when we have a problem on the expense side, as far as the northern REITs, there's a bit of a silver lining there because that's just going to reflect into rents. And so in my opinion, the rents, I don't know if they're just going to keep going up and up and up and up, but I think where we're at is very sustainable. And even if there is a reduction in the rent, I don't see that reduction in rent really impacting the whole business model. So it might be a little bit of reduction, but it's not going to make these REITs not worth investing in. So we have a very, very strong revenue model. The expense side, yeah, we're worried about the interest rates. I think the days of 2% interest rates are long gone. I think there's a 4 to 5% interest rate environment and business we work within that model. And sorry, tenants, but guess what? Your rents are going up. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. So it's still a good model. When we look at the bigger REITs and we look at the expense side, we look at the vulnerability of the interest rate. And in simple terms, those big REITs with 30, 40, 50 buildings, what are their mortgages? Okay, do they have mortgages? Is it all equity funded? Because they raise capital through people like David dealing reps. And if they have all the capital that you need to buy the building, there's no debt on the building. They're not even exposed to the interest rates. But that's not really how it works. They raise the capital, they still go get a mortgage. And then we look at those balance sheets and go, okay, what mortgages you got? And you got 2% mortgages, and they're all coming due in 5 months. We got a problem with that REIT. What about the next REIT? Oh, you 10-year. A lot of these REITs take 10-year terms. So a lot of these REITs are still sitting at 2% interest rates. A lot of these mortgages. The rents are going through the roof. Okay. Yes, things will change when those mortgages need to be renewed. But REITs have options. They can see this stuff. Our mortgage is coming due in 3 years. We got a big interest rate hike coming. Maybe we should raise more capital. Get rid of the mortgage. Let's just deal with equity. Okay, so there's a lot of options that these big companies have that we don't have. People who might own 1 or 2 apartment buildings. Okay, they have those options. So everything we look at in a REIT, leads us to believe that these are good. Our capital is protected. We like real estate. We're protected by real estate. These REITs are set up that they get funded. They don't want to get overly complicated, but they get funded through what's called a mutual fund trust, MFT. And that allows you to channel money through the trust into the limited partnership, which means the REIT. You don't really care about that stuff. The point is your money is protected by those private buildings. Nobody cannot sell those apartment buildings without your approval. So it's like owning a house. The good and the bad of a REIT, though, is they are the most boring investment you will ever make. Okay, you're either an active investor or a passive investor. Active investor means it's kind of exciting to buy a property. It's kind of exciting to buy an apartment building and put a joint venture together. There's a lot of balls in there. That's exciting. I love doing that stuff. The REIT is the most boring thing you'll ever invest in. The money goes in, it sits there. It's a private company. Okay. Compare that to the companies on the stock exchange. The public companies, they do quarterly audits. They have an audit financial statement every 3 months. A private company has audited financial statements annually. Okay, so you're sitting there going, how am I doing? Okay, well, you're doing fine. And the price is still $12 a unit for the whole year. And then at the end of the year, they do the audit, and it's very simple again, how they value it. With the audit, they do fair market value. Third-party appraisals come in. You got 20 buildings. Each building is worth $1 million. Your fund is worth $20 million. Divided by the number of unit holders, that's your net asset value. Simple. And that's how it goes up. Okay, so when we look at how these things perform consistently, the other thing I really love about these REITs is there's no up and down. Put your money in the market, you have a good day, a bad day, a good year, a bad day. These things just bounce up and down. And I'm not saying don't invest in the market. I'm just saying you're adding a lot of risk. And you can make a lot of money in the stock market. REITs are not designed to make a whole lot of money. It's designed to make you 10%. And one thing I've learned over the years is I've had clients ask me all the time, can you make me 10% without the risk? Okay, and that's what a REIT does. Okay, consistently from 7 to 12%. And there's two components of what you're earning. One component is what we call the distribution. That is very simple. Rents minus expenses equals what you have left over. And from that, they'll take their management fees. People need to get paid. From what's left, they pay the investors. And that's called the distribution. And you can take that money, you can take it as cash, or you can reinvest it back into the investment. So it's called a reinvestment program. That just means your value goes up. But when you receive that distribution, the beauty is it is non-taxable. That is a beautiful thing in the world of tax. When we're trying to save people taxes, you are getting your money tax free. Okay, and that is a really, really powerful tool for us when because we do financial planning, so we're trying to project people's financial lives for the rest of their life. So when you can add cash flow that doesn't hit your tax return, but is non-taxable, extremely powerful thing. And now, what is the downside? How can I receive all this money tax-free without any tax consequences? Well, there is. All the money you receive tax-free reduces your adjusted cost base of that investment. So in very simple terms, when you have an investment, you paid X, that's your cost base. When you sell it, if you were 2X, so you sell it, 2X minus 1X equals X. Okay, very simple. When you get all this money tax-free, it reduces your cost base. So when you do sell, you are going to pay a capital gain on that. Okay, and that's okay. We don't have a problem with that because from the financial planning point of view, we're getting tax-free money. And not only that, but we get to decide when we sell it. So we control that the eventual sale of that asset. And we tax plan around that. So it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Okay, the whole key is that we get this tax-free money. So that's what's called the distribution. Most of these REITs will have 5, 6, 7% distribution. Then on top of that, we do the annual audit, fair market value of all the buildings divided by the unit holders, and then we get a bump on the fair market value. So your share price goes up.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We're running out of time. Should we see if there's any,
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I tend to ramble on with that. I'm sorry.
are there any questions?
Any questions on these type of investments? Yes.
Sure. That's what you invested too much. Take the back. That's next. Based on the brand plus.
Yeah, so Roger's saying, what if I put in $200,000 and getting all these distributions back? So $200 is your adjusted cost base. Now you're getting distributions free. Your dues, you get 6%, whatever. You get $10,000 free distribution. Your cost base now is 200 minus 10, you're 90, you're 80, you're 70. Then you go to sell. Okay. But the nice thing about capital gains is, well, they used to only be half taxable. Only idiots in Ottawa made it 2/3. So we have this new capital gains inclusion, which we now have to deal with, which came into effect yesterday. Okay, so now instead of 50% capital gain inclusion, we have 2/3 capital gains inclusion. You don't have to worry too much about that. That's our job as far as tax planning. That's how but once again, they're taking more money out of our pocket. The good thing is, if it's owned individually, you still have the first 800,000 at 50% inclusion, not the 2/3. I don't want to go too deep into that. David, how am I doing for time? That's
Well,
okay, or?
let's see if there's one more question, and then we gotta move
Yes,
on.
sir.
Oh, what is the equation?
Some of the that direction. Anyone wants. So that you can. So building that into all things.
Well, that's again looking inside of the financial statements, and that's not on public, that's on private. Okay, here's the problem. There's public REITs, there's private REITs. Okay, the private REITs have zero correlation with what's going on in not only the housing market or the stock market. That's another reason I like them. They're not exposed to that stuff. On the public market, the reason I really don't like public market REITs is because the REITs in the public market, if the market goes through the roof, the REIT goes way up. If the market tanks, the REIT will go down based on what's going on in the market. That's why I stay away from public REITs and go to the private REITs. They have no correlation to that stuff. And as far as like anybody, we own a house, the mortgage goes down at the end of the year, we go, hey, what's my house worth? What's my mortgage? Hey, I made some money. Same thing in a REIT. Okay, there's the same principles apply. You get to share in the cash flow, just like we would if we owned our own rental property. We get the benefit of mortgage pay down, and we get to participate in the growth. All those things that we would buy a rental property for happen in a REIT, in a very larger scale. When you have 50 buildings and they're all 100 units, you have a lot of people paying your mortgage down. A lot, okay, and just on a closing note, I'm assuming you're standing there going like, getting in the book. So where do you buy these things? Okay, I'm very bullish on Alberta. Don't like Ontario. Landlord tenant board is the, listen, if you're a tenant, you love them. If you're a landlord, you hate them, okay? Alberta, no problem. You get to raise the rents to what the market will dictate. You raise them too high, you're not getting any tenants, so you got to deal with what the market will bear. You have a non-paying tenant within 30 days, the sheriff is there pulling them up. Sorry to be so cruel, but we're trying to run a business here. And most of us that have multi-unit buildings provide a good service to people that need housing, but when you get these people who, oh geez, I said a client last week, tenant from hell, the only way they get them out, they say, you got to buy me a house, and then I'll leave. It's nuts, it's crazy. So I like Alberta. We deal with the low to medium end, right? Where price per unit is very attractive. We can make money at $850 for a 2-bedroom apartment. That's only going to go up. That's not going down, right? So there's a lot of benefits in there. This is the guy you talk to as far as the different types of REITs that are out there. There's a lot of them. Location, when someone says, hey, I want to invest in a REIT. Okay, where would you want to invest in? Ontario? We have REITs that Avenue Living, they're out all west, and we have REITs that could go out east. Centurions all over Canada. I'm getting the eagle eye here. I think I'm done, right? We're good.
Yeah, we're running out of time, so.
Okay. Okay, so any other questions? Let Tim grab the mic.
Okay,
We're good?
you'll be around.
Yeah, I'm sticking around.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Jerry Hogan, House CPA, great presentation. Okay, so, yeah, Jerry has, as an accountant, he's a pretty entrepreneurial guy. So you can also check out his website, CanadianInvestmentServices.com, CanadianInvestmentServices.com. And he does a lot of joint ventures, buys apartment buildings himself. He may have his own REIT one day. And, yeah, and he's got business cards. So, so as Jerry mentioned, I am a dealing representative, but I'm also a mortgage broker. And today I'm going to talk to you about mortgages and outside the box mortgage lending. If you are a real estate agent, the idea is that we want to give you some ideas on how you can grow your sales. If you're not a real estate agent, but let's say an investor or just an enthusiast with an interest, I hope you'll find some interesting information in this presentation as well. So the first area when we talk about outside the box is rental properties. I mean, if you're a real estate agent and you work with a client who buys a property to live in, that's awesome. They might come back to you in 5 years or 10 years. They might refer your friend, but there are investors out there, and I'm sure most people know somebody who could be, owning 5, 10, 15, 20. Yesterday, I was talking to a guy who owned, at one point, he owned 50 property. And it can be a bit like gambling if you go to the extreme. And this guy was just leveraging whatever equity he could access from his properties, he would, and then he would just buy more. And that worked probably for a good 20 years until the last couple of years, all of a sudden prices get soft, interest rates go up. And now the question is, well, how do you find a positive cash flowing property, right? For rental purposes. I mean, if you're going to be putting down 20 or 25% on a piece of real estate, then you go into it and you have a negative cash flow, that's not a very tempting proposition. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past, and we did an event last summer at the beach, and it was all about this adding units to properties. Because there is this pressure coming from the Ford government with Bill 23 is what it's called. And municipalities are under pressure too. So some of them may be somewhat resistant, but there is pressure from the Ontario government. Some municipalities are more receptive to it, where you could take a single family home and create up to 3 units. So if you can figure out how to generate a positive cash flow now with interest rates at around 5%, you're going to be in great shape when interest rates come down and you have 2 or 3 units from what was previously a single family dwelling. So that's all possible. And I know Roger is a guy who can help you. He's pretty creative in that respect. But there's contractors around. We had a guy in last summer. His name was Colby Marshall from Barrie. He's both a contractor and a realtor. So his specialty was finding those properties. So that's a niche that any realtor could pursue. And when the market's slower, you got to be creative. The other thing that I'll talk about is if you do have investors, there's opportunities now, really good opportunities in 5 units and above. And I've been speaking with some of the people who own cottage courts, and they're 4-season properties, and they have 10 units there. And they're thinking, maybe I should go all residential. I mean, you'd be giving up some of the higher revenues you get in the summertime by doing short-term rentals, but you'd be saving a lot of money on management. And also you might be able to go from a private mortgage to this amazing CMHC insured mortgage. So CMHC, Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, a lot of people maybe heard of them, because if you're buying a single family home with less than 20% down, the property needs to be insured by CMHC, which isn't something that benefits you, the homeowner, but it benefits the banks because it'll protect them against losses. CMHC also has programs for builders, developers, landlords who have 5 units or more, and you can get really good rates. Amortization is now up to 50 years, and financing up to 95% financing in competitive, very competitive rates. So it's really amazing when people talk about how government's not doing anything to address housing affordability, the shortage of housing. I can tell you with respect to the CMHC program for multi-unit, 5 units and above, it's quite remarkable. And you get bonuses if you meet certain criteria with respect to affordability, energy efficiency, and accessibility. So there's definitely opportunities for entrepreneurs, builders, developers, landlords in that area. Land construction. Listen, if you have a business, let's say you're a realtor, for example, and you have you have a certain type of a niche, you're selling just regular single family homes, for example. Well, that's great if it's working, but when things are slowing down, you got to think outside the box too, right? What do you have? What can you do? And there are opportunities out there to buy, sever, tear down. So look for builders who have that experience, and commercial properties as well. I see all these discussion groups online, and I see people who say, if you're a residential real estate agent and you find a commercial opportunity, don't dabble, just hand it off to, but we all had to dabble to start, to get our feet wet if we want to learn. One thing my dad always taught me was education. That's something nobody can take away from you. So if you want to learn and you put in the time, you can learn to do different types of things, whether it's land, commercial, mixed use properties are where you have maybe a store and an apartment. So you have a combination of residential. So that's been the approach that I've always taken as a mortgage broker. And I do lots of residential, I've done lots of residential, I deal with the banks and others, but, and when I have a challenge that I don't know how to do it, I'll work with another mortgage broker who, you know, I can learn from and will help me get it done. Right? So I'm sure the same thing can apply to every business and any business. In terms of the types of borrowers, well, some borrowers are going to go to the bank and they might get discouraged if they're self-employed and they don't get the feedback that they want from the bank. When you go to the bank, and that's traditionally where people go for financing, if you fit inside their box, great. But if you don't fit inside your box because you're self-employed, I mean, what sense does it make really that when you're self-employed, the first thing they ask you when you go to the bank is for your tax returns? I mean, you may be incorporated and paying yourself just a minimal salary and you've got money in your corporation. Maybe you're a sole proprietorship and you're writing off everything under the sun. Well, our job as a mortgage broker is not to determine whether Revenue Canada is getting their fair share. But for some reason, the banks are in cahoots with CRA. Let's be honest, that's just the way it is. So the first thing they ask you for is your tax returns. Okay, and they're going to look at your, oh, well, you don't make enough money. That's not a problem for every self-employed person, but it's a problem for a lot of self-employed people. Maybe it's somebody who has had a credit issue. You might say, oh, the bank says, well, your credit's not good. Forget it. Yeah, you know, but well, yeah, but this was a past credit issue, and now I'm employed. Maybe I was sick. Maybe I lost my job, and I'm making money, and I have a down payment. So if it makes sense, it makes sense. But the banks, they'll say, oh no, minimum 2 years reestablish credit after a bankruptcy. Well, some people they go bankrupt, and guess what? They don't take the steps necessary. They've rehabilitated. They don't have credit. But now they go to the bank and they can't get a mortgage because they don't have reestablished credit. So there's many lenders out there. So you have your banks and other what they call A lenders or prime lenders. You have B lenders, or I like to call them alternative lenders, because B lenders suggest that you're, you know, a substandard borrower, and that's not always the case because you could be very strong, but maybe you just don't look on paper. And then, of course, there's C lenders, private lenders. Private lenders are more expensive, usually meant to be a short-term solution, a bridge. That's an area that I won't mention the name of the builder in town here. I've been getting referrals lately. There's a builder in town that sold a whole bunch of properties like 7 years ago, and now they're closing. And they're giving, so the people bought these properties for like $300,000 or $350,000. They're worth like $550 now. And all these people need to do is close. But the builder is like waiting to the last possible minute to let them know, give them notice, sending out the statements of adjustments at the last minute. No matter what your application is, you say, well, I plan on living in the property. I shouldn't have to pay the HST. Too bad, we don't believe you. Got to pay the HST. Well, I don't have enough money to close. That's too bad. You missed the closing date by 1 day. Poof, $200,000 profit gone. It's happened. It's happened. So everybody's got a need in what they do, and I think we've got to be open to different types of real estate. Connect yourselves with people, whether it's mortgage brokers, whether it's appraisers who can help you, other real estate agents, where you can learn, share information, and work outside the box to get things done. And that I think is, oh yeah. So that, oh yeah, here's one more tidbit. Reverse mortgage. You can have, if you're 55 years of age and lease, you can be living in up to a 6-unit property with a reverse mortgage. You don't have to make payments. You have rental income from the tenant. So creative financing. I always hesitate to use the word creative because people would think, oh, does that mean you're going to create documents for me? No, that's not what it's about. We work with the situation as it is, and if a mortgage application makes sense, we will help you get it funded in a way that will work for you. So that is basically it. Are there any questions on outside? Yes, Roger.
But it's the keys. Say cottage or you
Did everybody build out?
Still. Sees troops in and all the what you see watching the best on all happening. But much right, that's one, just machine all that. That's my, that's.
Well, it has to, so the question is, if you, let's say you have a cottage court with more than 5 units and you want to convert to all residential, so like full-time tenants as opposed to short-term. So I was working on, I am still working on one just like that. And the lenders, what they said was, institutional lenders, they said, show us the leases. We just want to see that you have long-term leases, right? And then you might have to have those, like, but you can get institutional money at least. And then CMHC might need to see that in place for some period of time before they'll insure it, but still, you can move from private money to institutional money by going that route and having a long-term plan. Yeah.
Last time I was holders of country growing. For sale, we're gonna buy, there's 300 apartments, is that like 400? Yeah.
We're in a week to find out what
He doesn't.
That's right. So first, you might have to buy it as a, if it's currently short-term rental or like hotel, you might have to buy it with traditional financing. Maybe that's private financing, and then you can work on a conversion strategy. Yeah. Good question. Yes, Kim.
Yeah. Are you seeing any DTVs, first or second? Can you want me on the
I think
on your radar?
it's realtors that are, the morning says realtors. I don't think they're.
No.
You guys aren't real estate.
Sorry. No.
Yeah, it's okay. I think it'll be the realtors that are getting his voucher.
Okay.
I believe.
I mean,
I don't think she's on.
or financing, I mean, or
Okay, so with the question Kim had, the first part of the question was about VTBs, vendor takebacks, and that's where the seller is giving the buyer a mortgage. And that's, that's a great type of outside the box approach. Because if you're a buyer, you may not qualify for financing, so you might be able to get financing through the seller. And it could be very good for the seller too. So, but as a seller, you want to make sure that the buyer is putting some money into it. Otherwise, and we do see that from time to time. It's more common, I think, in new builds. But from what I understand now, even builders are less eager to offer vendor take-back mortgages. So some builders are having a tough time too, especially where people bought at the peak and now they may not be able to close. I mean, the example that I was giving when people bought super low and there's a good opportunity for them. If they can just close and then they can turn around and sell the property right away. And I wasn't sure what the second part of the question, buying the mortgage down.
so. Why do they English?
And
Sockets, trust us. Should we go into it? 6 years and 3 years, and 3 years and 8 days. Struggling, I have a contact in the state of the 4 years, one data, for listeners. I've been having seconds. And writing sells and for you. 2 years.
yeah, there is one mortgage company out there, Shrewsbury Mortgages, who are advertising a rate of 4% right now. And but it's 4% is only for 1 year. And then after that, the rate will reset. And the hope is that rates will continue to come down because there's some uncertainty. We used to see a lot more of those types of mortgages where you had maybe 6 months at a really low rate and then the rate will go up. I mean, the lenders have kind of been very cautious, especially in Canada, when they introduced the stress test a few years ago, meaning that whatever your mortgage contract, whatever the rate you contracted at, you have to qualify at a higher rate. So we don't see a lot of those types of incentives anymore. but they are, I have seen it through the True North mortgages. Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Thanks. No problem. Thanks for coming out. Yes, yeah. Yeah, and thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so Jerry and I will be around, if there, are questions or you want to speak with us, we'd be happy to. We both have business cards here. I just want to mention, so, the real estate agents, Jerry and I made a big business decision. If you're a real estate agent, just let, your waiter or waitress know, because we'll be picking up your breakfast. And to the rest of you, we really do appreciate you coming out. And some of you are good clients and referral sources, so please don't be offended, but we work with a lot of real estate agents because for obvious reasons, real estate agents can often refer business to us on a repeat basis. So that's why we made that decision. But we did make an agreement with the restaurant to offer anybody else the $8.99 breakfast, which we really appreciate. So thanks so much. So that's a special discount because that's otherwise not available during the week. That's normally only available on weekends. So thanks for that. The Hive, Kelly, Joe, Troy, everybody, appreciate you guys, your service. Saturday nights, come and see us here. Live music every Saturday night, 7:30 to 10:30 p.m. We have a variety of musicians that are playing, always new people and different feature act every week. We have Aliza is going to be here with Walter, Plaid Bonanza, in another week or two. Right on. So she's a great singer, singing real estate agent, angel. Yeah. Right. Thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate it.